Okay, so here we're going to talk about moral realism. Go back and look at what 1 and 2 are truth apt and sometimes true, but so what the ethical non-cognitivist wants to say. So ethical non-realism is the idea that there's no objective fact of the matter about moral beliefs. And J.L. Mackie is one of the people who argues for this, and he says that, look, if moral facts existed, then things about moral facts, like properties that apply to moral facts, like goodness and fairness, would have a different ontological status than other types of entities. So he calls them queer. And so it's the idea is that they don't behave in the same way as other properties. In other words, the way that we treat ethical properties seems to be different from the way we treat other properties like redness and any other property that something might have. So he wants to say that he has a long thing about this, but basically he wants to say because they're kind of strange and they don't operate the same way as other properties, they can't exist. And so he, like some other philosophers, is an error theorist. So what this means is that you can't appeal to objective properties in ethical theory because they just don't work that way. So there are no moral ideas that transcend any particular institution or desire. So you can want to do good things, you can have reasons to do good things, but they're not going to be based in any kind of principle that's sort of an overarching principle that goes beyond what you might want or desire. So Kant has something called, he calls it the categorical imperative, and that's categorical means you have to do it no matter what, versus a hypothetical imperative, which is something that you do just because you want something else, like a goal. So for an error theorist, there's no such thing as a categorical imperative. There are only hypothetical imperatives. So there's no things that you must do no matter what you want, which is what Kant thinks that morality is. For an error theorist, instead, you might have reasons for doing something, but they're not going to be overarching ethical reasons. Is that propositions about ethical theories can be true or false, but not in virtue of the way the world is. So they reject 1 and 2. So they say that ethical statements can't be true or false. So basically they just are there, but they don't have truth value. And they affirm 3 because the lack of their truth value is independent of whatever we believe about them. So the fact that they don't have truth value is based in the world, but they don't mean anything. And one kind of ethical non-cognitivism is emotivism. So this is just saying that, look, okay, these ethical statements where we think we're saying something about the world, we're really just saying whether we approve or disapprove of the thing. So emotivism is the idea that saying Smith is a good person is just saying yay for Smith. And we're not really, we think we're making moral statements, but we're really just sort of expressing our opinion or our approval or disapproval. Some defenders of this type of view do say that, like, we might have reason to treat moral statements as if they have truth value, but in fact they don't. Now, ethical egoism or individual moral relativism says that there is no truth or falsity to ethical propositions, that they don't think that there's no truth or falsity ethical propositions, but instead that their truth or falsity don't depend on anything outside of the beliefs of an individual. So it's true or false that it's bad to hurt babies, but only relative to my belief about that. So it's not that you're just, this is only slightly different from emotivism, but the idea is that there is in a sense an objective good, but it's only relative to a person. So there is truth value to statements about ethics, but their truth value only applies to whoever is doing the speaking. It's a bit like saying I like ice cream. Yeah. So the one you hear about probably more often is cultural ethical relativism, which is similar, except that in this case, instead of the individual determining what's right and wrong for themselves, the culture determines what's right and wrong in that culture. So instead of me trying to figure out what's right for me only, it's our culture figuring out what's right for everybody in the culture, but they don't figure out what's right outside of the culture. And like I said, we can refer to our ethical stages, Kohlberg's stages of moral development here. The ethical egoism, I think, was stage 3, and this one's kind of stage 4. So sometimes when people talk about moral relativism, they talk about this idea of standpoints, which is sort of where you're coming from or where your culture is coming from. So they deny the existence of an objective moral order or one standard by which all moral claims can be judged. They say instead that there are a lot of standpoints that view moralities in different ways, and those standpoint is superior to another standpoint. So everybody has their own ideas about what's right, and they're all equally valid. And the only way a moral relativist can defend moral stances, such as that slavery is wrong, is from the context of a standpoint. So they can say slavery is wrong for the United States, that culture. Or if they're an individual ethical relativist, they can say it's wrong for me. They can't say it's wrong for everybody. And a lot of people want to be ethical relativists because they want to be tolerant of other cultures and they don't like to judge other people. That's one of the main arguments for ethical relativism. The other main argument for ethical or cultural ethical relativism is the idea that a lot of cultures disagree about morality, and so people want to conclude that there's no one correct morality for all. Turns out there's a lot of problems with this. We're not going to go into that many of them. But David Hume says that, look, the whole reasoning of this argument is bad, according to him, because you can't really reason from a descriptive claim, like cultures have different moral values, to a normative claim that you can't pass judgment on the values of other cultures. So a descriptive claim is one that just says the way the world is. Normative claim says the way the world should be. He and others have argued that you can't make at least certain kinds of arguments from the way the world is to the way the world should be. And there's a lot of debate about this. Some people say that, look, relativism is true because we can't make arguments for moral views based on facts, then we can't make them at all, because what are we going to base it on? So you can sort of go either way with this idea of the ought is distinction, but a lot of people like Hume say that, look, you just can't you can't go from the way the world is to the way the world should be. It's just an error in reasoning. But some of the main problems with relativism have to do with the fact that you just can't say that other people are wrong, which seems like a nice thing from this argument for tolerance, but it ends up being not so nice if you're going to allow cultures to just totally do whatever they want and step on other people and their own people as well. So relativism turns out to not be such a nice view when you realize that you have to endorse absolutely everything that a culture endorses, no matter how bad it is. And that's the main argument against it, really, though there are other arguments as well. So next we'll get into some views that are moral realists, that argue for an objective morality.